Hey everybody, we're back yet again with another top 15 for the Nintendo Switch, but this week we're going to be focusing on a genre that the Nintendo Switch isn't necessarily known for, which is shooters. Now, when I say shooters, I'm specifically talking about first-person shooters and third-person. Not shoot-em-ups, but I may do that in the future as well. Nonetheless, even though the Nintendo Switch isn't necessarily known for high-profile shooters, that does not mean it doesn't have some really good ones. In fact, I think it even has some great ones, so here I compiled a list of the top 15 best shooters for the Nintendo Switch. As always though, do remember that this is only my opinion and that yours may be different. If that is the case, let me know what some of your favorites are as well so that others can discover those games too. With that said though, let's get right into the list. At number 15, I have PAYDAY 2, which as a first-person shooter, it's a fantastic game. It has great level design, strong gun mechanics, and overall fun missions that can give you a plethora of goals to achieve. In fact, I think it's so good that I would really have liked to have put this higher on my list, but it's also a very social game. The thing about PAYDAY 2 is that even though you can play it by yourself, it is really meant to be played cooperatively, and unfortunately playing on the Switch, communication does become a problem. However, if you do have a workaround such as using Discord with your friends, then PAYDAY 2 is loads of fun, and one of the best first-person shooters on the market. Saints Row may be quite similar to the ever-popular Grand Theft Auto franchise, but it's paved its own identity into the game industry rather successfully with its over-the-top humor, wacky characters and story, and its fun, action-packed gameplay. Saints Row III is no exception to this, as that is exactly what you will get. As a gangster, you'll be stealing cars, shooting up the city, and really just causing all kinds of havoc while having a lot of fun doing so. I will say this though, if you do intend on getting Saints Row, I'm going to emphasize that this should be played in portable mode as it looks much better than it does while it's docked. It's been nearly 19 years since the original Red faction has launched. I mean, that's really hard to believe, and for its time, it was incredible. In a way, I would even say it was revolutionary for its destructibility because at the time, there really wasn't anything like it. You could literally destroy pretty much anything that you wanted to, which is a vital mechanic in the game as you collect scrap to level up, and that's the thing. Even 19 years later, Red Faction Guerrilla is still just as impressive as it was in 2001. It's a game that translates so well, not only for its technical achievements with its destructibility, but it's just a fun game overall. Whether it be the fun and destructive weapons, or turning invisible and whacking everybody with a hammer, this game is excellent. I would highly recommend it, even though it is an older game. One of my favorite game franchises growing up was TUROK, and in fact, I've wanted it to be rebooted in some way or another for years now. I mean beyond that awful reboot for the PS360, but really, TUROK holds a special place in my heart, which is why I'm so glad to see gamers today get to enjoy this old-time first-person classic. It offers a wide variety of enemies, my favorites being dinosaurs, and though the AI itself isn't really smart in comparison to some newer games, it's still a lot of fun and even has some good boss encounters. It still has that atmospheric feel to it with hidden locations and several fun and creative weapons, my favorite being the bow that has different arrows ranging from poison to explosive, and even though this is a remaster of an old Nintendo 64 game, it still holds up incredibly well today. In fact, it's better than it ever was. A lot of shooters has one primary goal, to shoot your enemy and make sure they don't get back up, but with BULLETSTORM, it does things just a tad different. Instead of primarily focusing on defeating your enemies, it instead will ask you to beat them in the most creative ways you can. This added with a slingshot weapon that can have you latch onto enemies scorpion style can make for a lot of fun, and the more inventive you are, the higher score you'll get. The better score, the more you can upgrade your weapons, and it makes for a fun little gameplay loop. With that said, the story is a little over the top and can be pretty raunchy, so this certainly isn't suited for everybody, but from a gameplay standpoint, you're not going to find many better than BULLETSTORM. Wolfenstein 2 very well may be one of the best looking games on the Nintendo Switch currently, and an impressive showcase for what the Switch is capable of. It's also a great single-player first-person shooter that has you killing Nazis, which is always a pleasure if you ask me, but that is the thing about Wolfenstein 2. I think it's so often that people view first-person shooters as shallow, but Wolfenstein 2 has a surprisingly good story with a strong set of diverse characters. At times it can be emotional, while other times it can be comical, but I think the overall experience is done very well. That would mean absolutely nothing, of course, if it wasn't a fun game. But of course it is, as you practically feel superhuman, dual-wielding weapons shredding into the enemy's heavy armored suits. Hey, you even play the first level in a wheelchair, and you still dominate your enemies, and what other games can you say that about? For years, free-to-play games were frowned upon, but with games like Warframe, you suddenly see that you can make a really high-quality game that isn't pay-to-win garbage. Warframe, though, is more like an action MMO third-person shooter, and I don't use the word action accidentally here. This is a very fast-paced game with a lot of different combat options. Not only will you be shooting your enemies, but you will also have a sword-based weapon you can carry as well to hack and slash your enemies in close-range combat. And yes, there is around 300 weapons in this game. And that's not even talking about all the upgrades. I mean, seriously, you can upgrade practically everything in this game. Then there is also a plethora of warframes to choose from, which are essentially mechanical suits with their own unique abilities and upgrades of their own. The mainline missions themselves will take you around 50 hours to complete, and again, this game is still being actively developed, and it's all free to play. Sure, you can spend money on microtransactions, but it isn't necessary to enjoy Warframe. Superhot has quickly climbed the totem pole to become not only one of the best indie games on the market, but it even cracks the best first-person shooters list for its unique take on the genre. See, in Superhot, your enemies only move when you move, which quickly turns this into part puzzle, part matrix. You will need to outthink your opponents by using your surroundings to your advantage, which includes throwing items, dodging bullets, slicing bullets in half with a knife, and really the list just goes on and on. There really isn't anything else on the market quite like Superhot, and for that reason, it's such a unique game that I would recommend to pretty much anybody. It may be an easy game to jump into, but it's not an easy game to put down. Oddworld Stranger's Wrath is just as the name implied, a little odd and maybe even weird. Honestly though, I do like this weirdness to it, as it makes for a unique experience, as there really isn't anything else quite like it. On one side of the coin, it may look just like any other first-person shooter, but as you play it, you quickly learn that that's only one aspect to Stranger's Wrath, as there is also a heavy emphasis on 3D platforming, something that I absolutely adore. Even your weapon though is different though, because unlike other shooters, you aren't shooting bullets or even arrows, but instead you're shooting live critters that you have to hunt down yourself. I mean, you can just choose to shoot the unlimited primary fire, but if you want some special effects such as a web that will entangle your enemy, then you may have to hunt down a little spider critter. This is one of the reasons that Stranger's Wrath has so much personality to it, and if you want something just a little different, I would highly recommend Stranger's Wrath. Overwatch, without a doubt, is my favorite game from this entire generation, so me placing it at only the number 6 spot was really hard on me, but Overwatch is a highly competitive game, and in comparison to other platforms, the Switch version is a step below that. This is mainly due to the controls, and even though that they did add motion control aiming, I still think it's necessary to use a pro controller to alleviate these issues. If you use this in docked mode though, with a pro controller, it does become a little bit more like the Overwatch experience that we all love so much. And thankfully, Overwatch does have a built-in voice chat, because in Overwatch, communication with your team is absolutely vital. Overwatch is almost like a mix of a MOBA game with a first-person shooter where, depending on what hero you play as, can drastically change the game and how you play. Each character in the game has 2 unique abilities and 1 super powerful ultimate that you can charge over time, and each character also has their own unique weapons as well. This offers an endless amount of possibilities in how you approach the game, and that isn't even considering how each hero synergizes with one another. While yes, playing a damage hero like Tracer, which can dash across the level in high speed and then rewind when she takes too much damage, is fun, you also need to understand you will need help if you want to win. This is done by combining different heroes and their abilities. You're going to need a healer for support, you're going to need a tank to absorb damage, and you're going to need to combine your ultimates for maximum effect. It's an incredibly deep game and absolutely addictive to rank up in. And like I said before, if you do use a Pro Controller in this game, this really is among the best of the best on the Nintendo Switch. Alien Isolation is one of the best horror games I've ever played, and it plays amazingly well on the Nintendo Switch. Honestly, it's shocking as to how good this game actually looks on the Switch. But as I said before, this is a first-person shooter horror game, and it pays a lot of tribute to the original Alien movies. In fact, I would even go so far as to say I liked Alien Isolation just as much as the movies, and maybe even more. Everything feels fantastic in Alien Isolation, and really the first half of the game, you feel as if you're truly being hunted down by the ominous xenomorph alien. So you're going to need to be discreet and sneak around to evade this freakish monster. It, however, does take a pretty drastic turn in the second half of the game, focusing more on action and androids, and even though not everybody liked that aspect to it, I do think that this is one of the best shooters on the Switch and a must-play for any fan of the Alien franchise. 4A Games are known for making some of the best-looking first-person shooters on the market that are complete power hogs, and they're even known for being particularly demanding on PC rigs. So when I first heard that Metro Redux, an upgraded version of the two original games, would be coming to the Switch, I was thinking there is no way this is going to look well on the Switch, or run well for that matter. Well, I'm glad to say that I was wrong and that these games run fantastic on the Switch. The thing I love about the Metro franchise so much though is that they are some of the most atmospheric games with an intriguing setting as well as a solid story. See, in Metro you are stuck in the Metro tunnels after a nuclear war has ravaged the planet and the above world is infested with mutated monsters. Don't worry though, you still get to see plenty of mutated monsters in the tunnels which are quite fun to take out. And when you do go to the surface, you get to take in that true horror of the above world. Metro Redux though truly is one of the best first-person shooters on the market and a must-play franchise for any first-person shooter fan. Resident Evil 4 is a prime example of why I love the Nintendo Switch so much. Resident Evil 4 is one of the best third-person shooters of all time, and that hasn't changed after all these years, and it feels fantastic to play on a mobile console. Of course, you can play it on your TV instead if you want, but being able to play this game on a mobile console, there's just something special about that. With that said though, there isn't really anything notably different from this version in comparison to the HD remake on other consoles, which includes no improvements as well, but it does still offer those tense situations of killing zombies. See, one thing about Resident Evil 4 is that you cannot shoot and walk at the same time, so anytime that you decide to take down a zombie, you have to sacrifice movement, which creates a lot of tension to shoot accurately, as each and every shot will count. I also like that this game is a little different than the rest of the Resident Evil franchise, giving you more of an outside setting as opposed to being locked inside somewhere, but this game isn't just a classic. It's still a game that holds up incredibly well today, and something that I would recommend to absolutely anybody. This is a true classic and one of the best third-person shooters ever made. For the absolute best first-person shooter on the Nintendo Switch, I have none other than Doom 2016. While some games need a good story to kind of mask the flaws of the gameplay and its mechanics, Doom 2016 is one of the most fun first-person shooters to ever exist. It's got that old-school fast-paced first-person feel to it, something like Unreal Tournament or Quake, and you really don't see games like that anymore. Doom though instead focuses on its single-player first and foremost, and has you slaying demons with a great level design and punchy weapons. You can also get up close and personal and basically perform a quick fatality to finish off your opponents, and this is all with like a heavy death metal soundtrack in the background that just makes every kill even more worth it. The thing is though, what amazes me the most about Doom 2016 is how well it runs on the Switch. This is a very fast-paced game, and it absolutely needs to perform well to feel good, and it somehow does on the Switch. I actually don't even know how it's possible. I really cannot rank Doom high enough on this list though, and that's why it is my #1 best first-person shooter for the Switch. While I may have Doom as the best first-person shooter, I would easily say that Splatoon 2 is the best overall third-person shooter, and probably the best shooter in general for the Switch. If you have noticed one thing about this list, most of these shooters are a bit gritty, but Nintendo took the third-person shooter genre, flipped it upside down, and made a colorful and unique third-person shooter. You don't even use bullets, but instead you splatter your enemies with paint. The thing about Splatoon is it's also vital that you paint the environment around you as well, which not only helps you win the game by having control of most of the map, but it also gives you extra mobility as your squid people can swim underneath the paint. This aspect to Splatoon is a lot of fun, which gives a little platforming to it, and you can surprise unexpected victims. As I said though, Splatoon is all about map control, and even though you can splatter enemies which causes them to respawn, your main objective is map control. But Splatoon isn't just a multiplayer game, but it has an enjoyable single player as well, and you also have a cooperative horde-like mode where you fight off waves of enemies. Splatoon 2 is both a unique game and it's a complete package. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if I forgot to mention any of your favorites, make sure to let me know in the comments below. But if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out.